What's going on, fellow A-Plusers? It's your boy, Adam Perez. We're back once again with another Lord of the Rings of Power review for you guys, episode number 5. Getting to it, finally. Late as always, Adam, unfortunately. Never when I honestly want to drop these episodes. Like, in my mind, I had this idea of I really would love to go live like Saturday mornings or something like that to go ahead and talk about this particular show. But life has just always thrown me a curveball, and this week is honestly no exception whatsoever. So it keeps happening to me, but I do apologize, guys. Hopefully you will certainly continue to stick around for our Rings of Power reviews, as I'm loving this series. I truly am. I feel like each episode I watch, I fall more and more in love with this, not only show, but just the world in general. There is just something so incredibly immersive about the Rings of Power. I do wonder if it has anything to do with maybe the vast number of main characters or storylines that we have for particular characters that seemingly have their own arcs, maybe intertwine a little bit. We get different locations, a lot of different locations each episode also. So it feels like they've done a really great job of not only world building, some lore building, also getting some history in here, further connections into the future of Middle Earth and things like that, and just getting the opportunity to see the different locales have really helped in regards to just feeling very immersed in this world. I think they do a really great job with the special effects. Even some of the set pieces from time to time may throw me off, but I really appreciate just the designs, the length of the lengths that they certainly will go to make this show look incredible. You can definitely feel the budget in here, and I think it certainly comes across in making you feel very much a part of this world. And so I really appreciate this series so far, and I gotta say, man, for the amount that I do pay for Amazon Prime, you know, there's so many streaming shows out there and streaming services right now. The fact that I know when I come into the Rings of Power that I'm going to get myself a solid hour of content. Like, some shows will give you the standard 45 minutes, which I love. Don't get me wrong. I love a good lengthy episode. 45 minutes, 50 minutes, great stuff. But Rings of Power, they have no problem giving you like an hour and 10 minutes sort of thing. It's exactly what I certainly need to truly enjoy a great storyline, and it definitely gives them the story time to flesh out these characters and the story arcs, and it really does go a long way with me. I really do wish that like Disney Plus from time to time, when it comes to their series, would take certainly a cue and some notes from how Amazon is certainly doing the Rings of Power series, because I always want more content. I truly do, and Rings of Power certainly comes through each and every week. But you know, getting into episode number 5, let's just highlight some of the characters in here that really stood out along with their storylines. And we'll certainly start off with Galadriel here in this episode. I thought first off, the actress is stunning. Again, I've said I feel like I gush about Galadriel every episode, and it's truly her presence on the screen and just this actress's performance. I really got to figure out what this actress's name is, so maybe I'll do some research this week. But this episode to me felt very much like a Galadriel kind of getting a little bit ahead of herself in her decision making, right? Clearly very adamant about getting back to Middle Earth and maybe using Halbrand as a pawn in order to kind of help the queen make her decision that, hey, if you go to Middle Earth, you're going for a good cause, you know, and maybe you'll have an army, or maybe he'll be able to gather his people together, and we'll have an additional force, if you will, outside of what Numenor is certainly going to be bringing, right? But the idea of Galadriel telling her this is the fact that she hasn't really even talked to Halbrand at all in regards to what the big overall plan is. So I kind of enjoyed seeing Halbrand throw a wrench in her plans, kind of make her look a little bit foolish in how hastily she certainly made her decision, to the point where even the queen kind of questioned Galadriel in here, like, is Halbrand on board with this plan or not? You know, it really has a lot of ramifications if he isn't, as the queen is also dealing with a little bit of pushback of her own people maybe certainly feel some type of way from time to time, and then getting the big revelation in here that her father actually doesn't want her to go to Middle Earth after all the warnings he's given, after how adamant he's been about working alongside the elves. I mean, maybe his plan was work alongside the elves, help them out, but we don't have to go to Middle Earth. So now that she is in fact planning to go to Middle Earth, he's definitely given her warning signs, and it definitely makes her question her decision. But as we clearly see by the end of this episode, they are fully going to Middle Earth as the voyage certainly does in fact begin. What this darkness that the king certainly speaks of, I will be interested to know. Is it the idea of powers from a ring, perhaps a future ring that might maybe cause the men of Numenor or whoever is on Middle Earth to kind of turn to the darkness or turn into their greed? Maybe that's what he's certainly referring to. But it almost feels like a lose-lose situation for the queen, who feels if she stays behind and ignores the elves' help, devastations are going to come to Numenor anyway. And so the idea of her going to Middle Earth, now she's faced with the idea of even Middle Earth having darkness that certainly awaits her. So very much a catch-22 in here, but I'm pretty sure the queen is thrilled that Galadriel and Halbrand have certainly figured out their differences and are certainly on board here. And I actually thought it was a really great sequence between Halbrand and Galadriel as she winds up approaching him to apologize for the idea of using him as a pawn, but really trying to get some truths out of Halbrand in regards to why is he so against the idea of even going back. And while Halbrand doesn't give us the full extent, he definitely teases the idea that, you know, maybe he's not as loyal or as full of light as Galadriel maybe thinks that he certainly is, right? He certainly plays up the part of maybe he was a part of some sort of level of darkness. Maybe he was doing something he certainly wasn't supposed to, or that would definitely be looked upon, and that is what actually caused him to sort of be a stowaway. And so the fact that Halbrand says in here, like, hey, if you guys knew half the stuff that I did, maybe you guys certainly wouldn't have taken me in. And I actually thought it was a really cool decision by the director and editing team in here too, as Halbrand is talking to talk about the humans of the Southland, as we get to see the group that wind up leaving the watchtower that Bronwyn and Arondir were watching over, to go ahead and actually kneel to the orcs, if you will, here, right? The idea is that we know that the orcs are coming for this watchtower. This old man who clearly was on the side of Morgoth, or understood the ancestors of the humans and how they fought alongside Morgoth and the darkness, and he believes that this is his only option in regards to saving these people by pledging their allegiance once again to the darkness. And we certainly see how that winds up turning out for them. But the idea that Halbrand is certainly going back to this, the fact that the editing was showcasing these people, these humans, the men of Middle Earth, bowing towards the orcs as Halbrand is explaining his situation, you know, makes me wonder if he's got either closer attachment to the orcs than he's certainly letting on, or maybe he was a part of that darkness himself at one point in time before truly leaving and abandoning his people. There's definitely a much bigger story to Halbrand here, one that I'm really fascinated. Again, while I'm not the biggest fan of the character because of the way that the actor portrays him, again, I for some reason when the actor comes on screen, I don't really care much for him or the character that he's portraying in here. But I will say, Halbrand as a character, his story, I definitely want to know a little bit more about. So to kind of see him decide, yeah, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and follow Galadriel here. I mean, they're even referring to him as Lord Halbrand. Was this guy even truly a king at some point in time? It'll be interesting to see how things go when he actually lands on Middle Earth. But the story of Numenor continues to impress me. And if honestly, honorable mention in here, I gotta assume, based off of what we see in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, you know, there is a town and a city that's literally right on the outskirts of Mordor, if you will. I do wonder if the people of Numenor either landed there and built their own city, because, and I cannot remember the name of the city that Aragorn in The Return of the King winds up becoming the king of, that particular land. If you guys remember the name of the city, please let me know in the comment section box below. But it has the same exact sort of design and aesthetics as Numenor. So I would assume the men of Numenor, as they left that area, went ahead and migrated here to Middle Earth and actually built that city and their kingdom and their kings, certainly outside of that. So, and again, the idea of Numenor doing something along those lines, I mean, you even see the queen's cousin in here really already infiltrating the idea of why it's even good that they go to Middle Earth. You know, the kid that tried to sabotage the boats in here, I don't know if that's his son or not, but even question the idea of like, you're going to take orders from an elf. And I kind of appreciated the cousin kind of showing his hand in the sense that, you know, we may be going over to Middle Earth to certainly help out an elf, but there's so much more to Middle Earth that requires us to be there. And the fact that he talks about the forests, the ore, the trade, the tribute, that sounds very much like a man who wants to go ahead and take somebody else's land and their materials, you know what I mean, and start opening up trades and building a system and a kingdom for themselves. They very much have, he at least very much sees the bigger picture of what being able to use other people's resources and claiming them for your own, what that can honestly mean. And I find that very intriguing that they have somebody behind the scenes that sees Middle Earth in that view instead of just helping the elves. But very eye-opening, and again, I think that's Tolkien's work going to show just our society in general in regards to how greed and power can really overcome a person's heart. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy this show so much, because there are so many incredible parallels to what we face not only in our society today, but what has kind of plagued our society in general. And I think Tolkien, even in his writings years ago, can certainly see that type of stuff. And so it really holds up, if you ask me. I think Tolkien's writings definitely do hold up. Outside of Galadriel and Halbrand, I guess we could talk a little bit about Durin and Elrond in here, because honestly, you know, before this episode ended, I kept thinking to myself, I would not want to be in Elrond's shoes. Really stuck between a rock and a hard place here, as he's trying to really keep his promise to his best friend, Lord Durin. But at the same time, he's got his king in, what was his king's name? Gil-galad, King Gil-galad. Also pushing Elrond on his side also, as we come to find the truth out from the king that yes, Elrond's plan to go to where Lord Durin is, those mines, was all in an attempt to discover what it is that the dwarves are mining for. And we do know that Elrond knows. Durin explained to him about the mithril. And Elrond has definitely been keeping it very much close to the vest until this episode, where the king admits to him that, yeah, that's the reason why I sent you. And I actually really even enjoyed seeing and hearing the legend of maybe how the mithril came to be, as they I think Elrond depicts the story of there being a big battle at the top of the Misty Mountain. There was a tree out there. On one side of the tree you had the elf that had put all of his light within this particular tree, and on the other side you had a Balrog from the army of Morgoth certainly fighting, so light and dark on one side. I think he said Elrond mentioned that lightning happened to strike the tree the same time the elf was pouring its light into that tree, and it wind up just creating just power straight through the mountain and creating this brand new ore in mithril that is supposed to be as strong as light itself. And so the fact that Elrond recites this sort of legend immediately lets him realize, so that's what the king has me going to the dwarves about this entire time. And you know, once Elrond learns at least the truth the way that the king presents it, that, you know, if they don't have this mithril for themselves, their own species could certainly be lost and diminished to the light, as it seems as though like there's this blight that's kind of taking over the elves' realm and kind of poisoning and darkening things as well. So, you know, you've got the king that clearly wants Elrond to pursue an avenue that's very much against the oath of what Durin had in mind. And so, you know, the fact that even Elrond in this episode confronts Durin and actually tells him what the situation is quite admirable, if you ask me. You know, while I don't know the Elrond character so incredibly well outside of 4 episodes that we've seen, the fact that he doesn't go behind his friend's back and he actually confronts him to let him know what the situation is, yeah, I applaud that. I truly applaud that. And to kind of see Durin take it the way that he does, considering that his father knew that the elves were up to something, smelt something fishy a mile away, and to see that their reasonings for doubting the elves were certainly right. I think it's intriguing that Durin is so accepting of what Elrond said, to the point of he's open to even talking to his dad about it. Now, I think where the situation will get tricky here is, while I think Elrond and Durin might think to themselves, hey, you know what, maybe we can split the mithril with each other, right? Like, maybe we'll get 70% of the mithril, you get 30, right? Or maybe even 60-40. I have to believe that the king, what's his name, Gilgalad is probably thinking, nah, maybe we get 90% and the dwarves can keep 10. Like, I really do think that's the ratios are probably much further off, or maybe the king wants all of it certainly to himself. And I think we're definitely going to have some problems here, especially just considering the relationships between the elves and the dwarves. I highly doubt that the king will even trust this particular elf king. So we'll see what happens. But I will say, knowing the mountain or the cave, was it Khazad-dûm? Isn't that the same cave that Gandalf and the Fellowship of the Ring were in the Fellowship of the Ring, where they fought the giant ogre and the orcs? It was an incredible battle. I do believe that was Khazad-dûm, but maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comment section box below, guys. But I continue to just love the idea of seeing what that relationship in that world is like now, and where it certainly leads us, because to me it very much feels like the elves took all the mithril for themselves by the time we're in Lord of the Rings, and the dwarves had nothing for themselves besides their traditions. But outside of that, I actually really enjoyed like the table talk between Durin and the king, just the sarcasm and just the awkwardness just back and forth between those two. Even the fact that Durin gets the king to give him the table that they're eating on so he can certainly take it home, and Durin just laughs at the idea. You know, he's like, it's really not that important, but you know, I wanted to walk away with something type of mentality. I really enjoyed Durin. Durin is definitely hilarious to me, and I really enjoyed the relationship between Elrond along with Durin as well. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this team up might certainly work out between the both of them. Outside of that, who else should we talk a little bit about? We could talk about Arondir, the elf that's helping Bronwyn out. Shout out to Arondir and the actor that plays him. You know, I think in the first episode, when we did our review, I was talking about the idea, like, man, this elf has got it tough, right? Like, not only is he an elf, but he's a black elf also. Like, this guy, you know, nobody probably likes this dude in the world of men. But I actually come to find out that the actor that plays him is actually Puerto Rican, like myself. So it's like a fellow Boricua that I can really relate to. Talk about representation, man. See, this is where inclusion and diversity and representation all comes into play. He had a great IG story about the idea of, you know, never thinking that he would get this opportunity to hold a spot as an elf in a very memorable J.R.R. Tolkien kind of story, right? And so the fact that he is where he's at today, just an incredible story sort of thing. And so Arondir is in this episode here, as he is sticking by the 50% of the humans that decided to stick around and not leave to go ahead and join up with the orcs. And he's even teaching Theo in here how to go ahead and shoot an arrow. Again, I'm still under the belief that maybe Arondir is the son of Theo, but we just certainly don't know that yet. But just kind of seeing them together, I was like, oh, that's just great father and son time, even though I have no idea if that's the case of what we're seeing here. But I am surprised that Theo at least reveals to Arondir the sword that he has, and coming to find out it is actually a key maybe to unlocking Sauron's power. It's definitely what the orcs are looking for. They know that it's certainly out there. They can definitely feel its power, and so they're definitely coming. So I thought it was actually pretty cool, not only to highlight the sculpture of Sauron on the Watchtower wall, but also the sword as well, and it just goes to show you its levels of importance. But yeah, now that Theo is certainly using it, and I'm also sure that the gentleman that gave himself up to the orcs has probably got a big mouth and probably letting Adar certainly know that, hey, that sword that you're looking for, that key, that power to becoming the god that you want to become, yeah, I've seen it. And so they're definitely coming for Theo and them. So we'll see how they, what plan they come up with. It seems as though they might have teased the idea of maybe trying to collapse the entire watchtower on top of the horde of orcs once they certainly arrive. So we'll see what they wind up doing when it comes to episode 6. But the Arondir storyline certainly does continue. And honestly, I was wrong about the dude, or at least I feel like I was wrong about the dude. Maybe he was in fact sent just to go ahead and give those people a message. He delivered the message. It wind up giving followers to Adar and his fellow orcs. So it does make me quite, I guess, you know, maybe Arondir could certainly still be working for Adar. But, you know, seeing how he's been talking with Bronwyn along with Theo, it does make me think that he doesn't have any ulterior motives. So I'm going to trust him for now. I'm definitely going to trust Arondir for now to see how that all plays itself out. And then last but not least, we've got Nori, the Harfoot, along with this mysterious star man, if you will. And, you know, I am fascinated with the Harfoots here. And I was having a conversation with the girlfriend the other day, and I came to the conclusion, or at least one of the theories I have, is after seeing the Harfoots and how much they migrate, which, by the way, I love the idea, like the little roadmap that we get in this episode of seeing the little footprints and stuff as they're crossing across Middle Earth and things like that to these different regions and villages and stuff. It seems as though Nori and her family are very much at the very far back end of the line when it comes to the Harfoots. Like when they're traveling, I feel like I don't see any other Harfoots around, but they're clearly there as we get to see them all together in the forest when they wind up getting attacked by wargs, if I'm not mistaken. You know, my theory in regards to the Harfoots is that they eventually do become hobbits. Like, I do wonder if there is either a group of them that fall behind from the migration line and decide to maybe eventually just settle down. Like, Harfoots are such nomads, constantly moving and migrating, depending on the season and stuff. I do wonder if there's a group of them that eventually just get tired of moving and just want to find a nice place, settle down, create a village for themselves, and maybe over 1,000 years, that's who they eventually turn into, people that just don't want to go anywhere anymore. And maybe that's the mentality that the hobbits wind up acquiring for themselves. And then anytime a hobbit that does come around and wants to travel or go outside the Shire, it's like, wait a minute now, right? But maybe that's just part of their Harfoot sort of legacy and tradition kind of still within them when it comes to like Bilbo Baggins and Frodo and things like that. So I do wonder if the Harfoots are just the beginnings to what the hobbits will eventually be. But we'll see how this story winds up playing itself out. And but clearly it's not an easy life, as we come to certainly find out. And there are clearly some people that definitely still don't trust this stranger to the point of even thinking like, hey, maybe we should just ditch them and leave them, sort of thing. What a terrible mentality to have. But I did like how this episode begins with Nori talking to the stranger, who, again, I believe this might be Gandalf, talking about the ideas of perils and what dangers mean, and the fact that he even comes out and helps protect them from the wargs was pretty impressive. You shall not pass, and he like slams his hand against the ground. He didn't say that, but that's what it always reminds me of. But clearly using his abilities caused his body to kind of decay, or something strange to certainly happen to it. So he has a little bit of a rehab in this episode where it looks like he's using his abilities to freeze his hand. And this is where Nori comes into play by grabbing him, and him also her hand also being frozen before his powers just like thrust her halfway across this particular forest. and Nori starts to realize, you know what, maybe he's not as friendly or as the gentle giant as I certainly assumed of him to be. And I think this is the first time that the stranger realizes that maybe even he's a little bit of a peril and a danger to these Harfoots. And so it'll be interesting to see how he eases Nori's mind in regards to trying to trust him again. And I also wonder, there's a part of me that almost wonders if he is Gandalf, if the idea of getting a staff might actually help him in regards to channeling his powers. So instead of channeling his powers to hurt his body and decay his body, maybe channeling the powers through his staff and whatever crystal he has maybe helps him use his abilities much more significantly without hurting himself. Those are just some of the theories that I definitely have. But I am interested in the Nori and the stranger storyline in here overall. But solid episode, man. Really enjoyable once again. The voyage to Middle Earth begins for our people in Numenor. And we got a ton of people already on Middle Earth to certainly follow with some great storylines certainly headed our way. But let me know what you guys thought about episode number 5. Did you enjoy? Did you not? What are some of the storylines that really jumped out to you? At the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. I want to know yours. Let your thoughts be known in the comment section box below after this video airs, and we'll definitely continue this discussion until our next episode. But until then, guys, do me a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.